Alrighty, everybody. It is currently Saturday, November 22nd, 2025, and I'm coming at you live from the depths of an incredibly wet sickness. That's how. That's it. God damn. I'm gonna be coughing this entire episode. Look, I'm just trying to get an episode out at this point. I don't care if it's 30 minutes long. I just want to get something out. You know what I mean? Because consistency is key. No matter what you're doing, consistency is key. And look, I'm not a very successful person, so I wouldn't take too much life advice from me, but I do think if there's one thing that you can do to help guarantee success, it's consistency. And I probably won't, I definitely won't become successful in this because I'm not talented, but I don't know. It'll help me with something, but I have been extremely not extremely sick this week, but I have been pretty sick. I've I've been trying to eat as much food as I could this week because even though I'm losing weight, I know from previous experiences that trying to continue to eat in a diet while you're like pretty sick, like if you're a little sick, you can make it work, but if you're really sick, you're just gonna have, like, a month-long cold, and you don't want that, no one wants that, so I've been trying to eat as much food as I can, but this sickness is it's so powerful, that I still have somehow been losing weight despite the fact that I've been trying to eat as much, like, carbs and sodium and water, like, all the stuff that makes you gain weight, I've been trying to put that in my body to help me fight off this sickness, but I don't feel too sick anymore, I'm mostly just my body's trying to expel all the mucus that I currently have up in me, and there's a surprising amount. There's a surprising amount of mucus in my body that I'm trying to expel out of me. It's in my lungs, it's in my nose, it's I think it's in my eyes too. My eyes have been watering like crazy. It's everywhere. So I'm probably gonna be coughing a lot this episode. I got some water next to me, and I also put in a Zyn, which probably isn't the best idea. I've only gone through like 5 Zyns this week. And so everyone I put in is like, it feels amazing, you know? Because usually anyone that's ever done nicotine before knows at a certain point, you're just like preventing yourself from like going through like nicotine withdrawal. Um, um, but when you take a little break from it, it feels really, really good. Um, And that's not just nicotine, it's jacking off too, which I haven't been doing either. You know, you gotta you gotta preserve everything you can preserve, you know, physically when you're sick. That's why I haven't been working out. That's why I've been eating a whole ton. It's why I haven't been moving really at all. I'm just trying to preserve all the energy I can to help fight off this sickness. And I had a fever for a couple of days, but overall, it hasn't been horrible. And, the worst part of it was I was, like, super tired for, I mean, like, 3 or 4 days this week, and I was like, "What is happening?" Like, what I'd sleep for, like, 8 hours, and it wouldn't be, like, great sleep, like, I'd wake up a couple times, obviously, my throat's fucked up, my nose is all stuffed, and so I'd wake up a couple times, but I'd be like, "It's still 8 hours of sleep." Like, I shouldn't feel like, it did life didn't feel real at a certain point because I was so tired. Um, and so I was like, "What could it be?" I was like, "Do I have cancer? Do I have AIDS or something?" Like, am I sick because somehow my immune system has been compromised by some sort of greater disease? I was like, "Is that what's going on here?" Um, and then I realized, no, it's because I'm taking this medicine. Um, And it's like acetaminophen, which is the fever reducer, and it has some other stuff in it. And specifically, I'm taking it because of the all the congestion that I have, and I was looking at the side effects on the back of on the back of the box, and it was going through all of them, and one of them was sleeplessness, and I was like, I mean, I haven't been sleeping great, but I've been sleeping, you know, as much as I need to sleep. And so I asked the AI about it because I literally couldn't Google anything. I was so tired. I was like, dude, if I have to type something out, we're never gonna figure this out if I have to do any work to find it. And so I took a picture of it, and apparently one of the other side effects of this drug is just general drowsiness, like a Benadryl antihistamine type drowsiness. So it had the opposite effect on me, which that's a lot of drugs do have the opposite effect on me. You know, like caffeine. Caffeine makes me tired. It makes me tired and not tired at the same time. Um, like alcohol, I know most people they drink and they're like, yeah, let's go, let's party. For me, I'm like, I'm not gonna move ever again in my life. Like that's that's the feeling I have um when I drink, you know? But the body is an interesting thing, and we're going to be talking about the body today because we're talking about ancient Greek science. You know, because the ancient Greeks actually, you'd be surprised how close they were on a lot of things, you know, and I'm not just talking about math here. We're going to talk about math a little bit with our first guy, but the other two that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about Hippocrates, who you've probably heard of, and then Democritus, who that kind of sounds like the guy who came up with democracy. Maybe he did, but that's not what we're going to be focused on with him because this guy he knew about atoms in like the year 700 BC. It's crazy. Um, so yeah, those are the three guys we're going to be talking about: Archimedes, Hippocrates, and Democritus. All very sick names, dude. All kind of black sounding names, if I'm being honest. Those are, this is my son. His name is Democritus. You know, they do sound like black names. And maybe that's where black people get their name inspiration from. You know, maybe they're just watching Percy Jackson or whatever, and they're like, "That's what I'm naming my son." Um, but yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm just trying to get an episode out. Just trying to get something out there. We might have current events this week. We might not. It depends on if my roommate comes back or not, because I don't know if I'm gonna be able to record two episodes back to back. It's I'm just, it's like physically I feel fine, but my voice is just it's so much worse than usual. Like usually my voice is like kind of nasally and annoying. I feel like now it's just so much worse. And so this is probably going to be the only episode this week, but I mean it's kind of the goal. You know what I mean? Just one a week and just do that for as long as I can. And so this is ancient Greek science. Um, and I just didn't want to focus too much on one guy, you know? Especially because with these guys, and we're gonna talk about this, we know like nothing about their actual lives. Um, Obviously, there's like that joke of like how ancient historians would just be like, this guy was the son of a god, and he led an army of 10 million dudes who fought another 10 million dudes. Just like completely, just like making up whatever dumb shit they wanted to. Um, and that's true of these guys as well. And I do think that's pretty sick, you know what I mean? To create this crazy mythology just around whoever. Like these guys weren't great kings or philosophers, or I guess they were philosophers, kind of. I think I think everything back then was just a different type of philosopher. Like in ancient Greece. I think it was like if you were I don't know, like a bread maker. You would be like a bread philosopher. I feel like everything was just based around philosophy back then, because all of these guys, they do refer to them as philosophers as well. But they're just nerds. But even like the nerds of ancient Greece had like this crazy mythology built around them where it was like I think Hippocrates, they said he was like a descendant of Hercules. Or Heracles. I don't know if Heracles and Hercules are the same guy, but their names are so similar that I don't really give a shit. We're just gonna pretend that that's true. But like everyone is somehow related to like some grand mythological figure. It's very funny. Ancient history, like the history that ancient people described is very funny because it's just not true at all, but it's just so fun to pretend that it is. And I'm sure, you know, the nerds out there will be like, it's an analogy, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know if those dudes knew what a fucking analogy was. Like that was so long ago. They were just so so dumb back then. I don't think they knew that you could be metaphorical. I think they actually believed that stuff, or maybe they didn't. Because, like I said, some of these guys are pretty smart. You'd be surprised by some of the shit that they have figured out. But I guess we'll just get into it with our first guy, Archimedes. So, you, if you've ever taken like trigonometry before, then you've probably heard of this guy. He was, yeah, Archimedes was a mathematician, physicist, engineer, astronomer, and inventor from Syracuse. Go Big Orange. No, he's not from Syracuse, New York. He's from Syracuse in ancient Greece, which that's another funny thing to me, especially about America. The fact that we have like the fact that Syracuse is named after like this ancient Greek city that had that was like a center for philosophy and trade and all that stuff, and it's like the American Syracuse is just like strip malls in like a general gray atmosphere in like a shitty college. There's something funny about that to me. Like, yeah, yeah, this fucking conglomeration of potholes in upstate New York that we call a city. That's basically the modern day version of Syracuse of ancient Greece. Yeah, they're the same thing. There's something funny about that to me. Dude, talking is so hard right now. I am so I'm just gonna keep pushing through it. All right, and so Archimedes was born in 287 BC in the self-governing colony of Syracuse, which is it's in Sicily. Uh so it's in Italy, but it was still part of like that ancient Greek empire. I don't know, ancient Greece is weird. It's not like Rome where they like called themselves Romans and stuff like that, and we like know all of their history. Like the Romans wrote down a lot of what they did. The Greeks, they also wrote that shit down, but they didn't do it as much. And I don't know if they called themselves Greeks. I know there's a ton of different like periods in ancient Greek history. I know that like Alexander the Great, he led the Macedonian Empire, I think it was called. Like they didn't call themselves Greeks, I think for the most part. They called themselves like Hellenic peoples or whatever. Um, but it's all ancient Greece, all right? It's all based around those islands and shit like that on the Balkan Peninsula. But he's an Italian. He's a wop. And God, the Italians just blew their load a little bit too early. You know what I mean? They had Rome and all that stuff. Obviously, Archimedes. Um, but yeah, not doing a whole lot in the modern age. I just feel like they blew their load too early. You know what I mean? Like, like the wops nowadays. They're you can't convince me they're the same people who were coming up with all these crazy, mathematical theorems and like this great empire that was the biggest, most powerful empire the world's ever seen. You can't convince me that that's the same group of people. Like I know in The Sopranos, one of the things or one of the famous lines Tony has is like the Jewish guys like the Jews have survived, but where are the Romans? And Tony's like, you're looking at them. And I don't know. I feel like WAPs aren't the same as Romans. Like maybe genetically they're the same, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't think they're the same group of people. And obviously, like I said, we don't know shit about the history that was going on back then, especially like we can gather some things from archaeological evidence, but we can't get too specific, dude. So not much is known about Archimedes' family, but it is said that he was related to King Hero, Hiero, Hero. I guess that's how you say it. Hiero, King Hiero II, who was the Greek tyrant of Syracuse. And yeah, this is another one of those things that I just didn't do too much research in because I'm a lazy piece of shit and I'm also sick right now. Boom, two excuses. I can't even laugh at my own retarded jokes now without coughing. But um, yeah, tyrant. I know Tyrannosaurus Rex, like that name means terrible king or something like that, or like terrible lizard king. I think that's what Tyrannosaurus Rex means. And so tyrant, like you hear the term dictator and you're like, oh, that's like an evil guy who like punishes people and stuff like that. But in the ancient context of like Rome and stuff like that, a dictator wasn't actually like it didn't have the negative, connotation or whatever. And so I wonder if tyrant is kind of like a similar thing where it doesn't have the negative connotation. Like it just means king or whatever, but they just use the word tyrant. But I think tyrant does have like that root word that means terrible. I don't know. Maybe the guy was a piece of shit, maybe he wasn't, but he was allegedly related to Archimedes. And King Hero II was a real dude. He wasn't like Hercules or Zeus or Achilles or some of these dudes who are more questionable in nature. He was for sure a real dude. And so Archimedes was Archimedes' most famous and important discoveries were in mathematics, and one such discovery was called the method of exhaustion, which, yeah, I don't know. It's not that exhausting to talk about. It's actually pretty simple, but yeah, it's mathematical shit. But he also was obviously an engineer and astronomer and all that stuff. Back in the day, if you were smart, like if you had an IQ of like 100, you were smarter than everyone else who was living back then. So you could really like be a jack of all trades. It's not like now where we're so advanced when it comes to like math and engineering and technology and stuff that you have to choose one specific thing. Like back in the day, everyone was just so stupid and we had discovered so little that you could really do it all. But Archimedes, he's specifically known for math, and the that's like the part of his legacy that still is very strong today is his mathematical discoveries. Like you'll learn about Archimedes today. And I know a little bit about Archimedes outside of this, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So, but first we got to talk about the method of exhaustion, which is what he discovered. So, the method of exhaustion uses small polygons that fit into a larger shape whose area cannot be easily calculated. So, in if you've ever taken calculus before, like I said, you'll hear about Archimedes in trigonometry, but in calculus, you'll learn about the method of exhaustion because um, a lot of calculus is about calculating the area underneath a curve on a graph. Um, but sorry. All right. But basically, I'll describe this for you. So the area of a circle. Let's say you don't know how to do the area of a circle, which honestly most people don't know how to do the area of a circle. And let's say you can't Google it and you don't know about pi, right? You need pi to calculate the area of a circle. What you would do is you'd use the method of exhaustion if you couldn't use those two things, which is basically like you can calculate the area of a square. Most people know how to do that. The area of a square is just base times height, right? And base and height are the same thing. So it's just one side, you take that, multiply it by itself, and you have the area of it. And how you calculate the area of a rectangle is base times height. And so you draw a square inside the confines of the circle, right? And then you calculate the area of that square. And then obviously that square that's inside the circle doesn't take up the whole area of the circle. And so you draw some smaller rectangles on the side of that square and you'd calculate the size of those or the area of those rectangles. And then you'd keep doing that and doing that and doing that and eventually you'd have a rough estimate of how big that square is. And that's the method of exhaustion. Um there's also Riemann's theorem or whatever, which that's used for calculating the area underneath a curve on a graph. Um, but Archimedes didn't come up with that. But Rieman's theory is a method of exhaustion, but it's just slightly different. It's just applied to a different scenario. So, the more polygons you have, like I said, the more accurate the area is, and Archimedes used this method to calculate a highly accurate pi. And like I said, everyone knows pi, 3.14159. Those are all the digits I know. Um, but he didn't discover pi, right? He didn't come up with it or whatever, but he calculated it to like 1,000 places or whatever. And the way he did it was like using triangles and like the diameter of a circle or something like that. I don't know. They tried to explain it in the Wikipedia thing I was reading, and I was like, dude, no one's, no one's, you already did it, right? Archimedes did the legwork for us. He already figured out how to do all that shit. So I'm not gonna worry about how he did it. I just know that he did it. All right. Um, but the method of exhaustion is, and it's intuitive, you know what I mean? Like if you had to calculate the area of a circle, you'd probably somehow in one way or another independently come up with the method of exhaustion, but he just understood it better than everyone else and he used it to, like I said, calculate pi like that. And so he also came up with ways to represent arbitrarily large numbers using the myriad, which is the Greek term for 10,000. So I guess back in the day, they just weren't worried about like quintillion or whatever, right? Like they just didn't give a shit about that. And so they didn't have, no one came up with a way to be like, just keep adding zeros to the end of the thing. Like the numbering system we use now is Arabic. It's from like Islamic Golden Age scholars or whatever. But obviously, ancient Greece came way before the Islamic Golden Age, and so they didn't have the same numbering system that we did. And so Archimedes was like, dude, I'm gonna be calculating some pretty big numbers, so I gotta come up with a way to represent that. And a big thing he did was like, how many grains of sand would it take to fill the entire universe, right? And I think that's the reason why he had to come up with this system. Um, and the basic way that it works is it's just 10,000 times 10,000 times 10,000. And you'll just do that over and over and over again to represent the giant number that you got. It's it's not super complicated. It's pretty dumb too, in hindsight, but um they just didn't have anything like that back then. They didn't and because it just didn't matter back then, dude. It was just people were like shitting, people were dying from shitting every day. They were like, I don't care about a quintillion, I don't care about a trillion, dude. You figure it out, Archimedes. And so he was like, dude, I did calculate how many grains of sand it would take to fill the entire universe. And he was like, it's like 24 or 243 ventillion or whatever. And it's just like Archimedes, dude, shut up. Like you got pi, you did all this other shit. Stop telling us, stop pretending like you know how many grains of sand it would take to fill the entire universe, dude. And obviously, these motherfuckers didn't even know that the Earth orbited around the sun. They didn't know shit, dude. So there's no way he calculated that. He did calculate some other shit, and we got to give him credit for that. But it, I'm not going to stroke his ego and be like, oh, Archimedes, you're so smart. You figured out how many grains of sand it would take to fill the entire universe. I'm not going to do that. All right? He can suck my dick. And he probably would suck my dick too because he's from ancient Greece and those boys were gay. So, and this is where we get into like maybe a little bit of legend about what Archimedes did. But so basically, the Romans were trying to sack Syracuse. And this is a bit of a cameo from before the Romans became the full-on Roman Empire that we think of. A little bit of a cameo here. They were trying to sack the ancient Greek city of Syracuse. And according to the history, Archimedes invented war machines for Hero the Second, who, like we said, he was the tyrant of Syracuse. And so he was like, Archimedes, dude, you know how many grains of sand fit into the entire universe? These guys called the Romans, I don't know who the fuck they are, dude. Fuck these Roman dudes. I need you to make some machines so that we don't get fucked up by these Roman guys. And so that's what Archimedes did. Um, did he actually do it? It's questionable. He probably invented something, right? Like they're like one of the things that they mentioned was he invented like these new and improved catapults, and it's like, yeah, he probably did that. But some of these other things I have some questions about. So the most infamous of these war machines is Archimedes' heat ray, which is a device that would use mirrors to reflect several beams of the sun into a single point to burn attacking ships. So you've probably seen this on Mythbusters or whatever when they took all the mirrors. Yeah, they tried to prove this on Mythbusters to see if he did it or not. And other scientists have tried to do it as well to varying degrees of success. So this one actually is decently possible. There is a decent chance that Archimedes, somehow using math or whatever, figured out a way to concentrate several different beams of sun using basically like a magnifying glass, but a mirror magnifying glass, and reflect all those beams of the sun into one single point to burn these Roman ships so they couldn't attack Syracuse. But he maybe did that. But this next one, no way. No way he did this. So ancient historians say he also invented cranes which dropped huge chunks of lead on boats, or the cranes picked them out of the water with iron claws and then dropped them back into the water so that these ships would break. I I don't think he did that one, dude. Like I said, the catapults, maybe. Maybe Archimedes figured out a way to make catapults more accurate or, stronger or whatever, but he was not inventing giant claw machines that could pick up Roman ships and like throw them through the air. That's like Pacific Rim type stuff, dude. There is no way Archimedes was full on Pacific Rim out here. I fuck with the boy heavy. This might be a little bit of cap. You know what I mean? Um, and this isn't coming from Archimedes himself. Archimedes wasn't like, dude, I designed this fucking thing that can throw a ship 1,000 feet or whatever. He isn't saying this. This is from historians like Plutarch and what's the other one? Livy, a few other historians, but nah. Archimedes, love the dude, great guy. I'm not gonna give him credit for this one. And so, according to the Greek historian Plutarch, Archimedes was killed by a Roman soldier while working on mathematical proofs. So, spoiler alert, the Romans did end up taking Syracuse. It's tough. It's tough for the boys. Um, but yeah, they were they, I, they just didn't know what they were up against, dude. They didn't know that they were up against like the Romans. You know, it's tough for him. It's tough. And he was just and like the story is so sad. So the one of the stories that Plutarch tells about Archimedes' death is that Archimedes was like just sitting like in a public space, and there was like a bunch of dust on the ground. And Archimedes was using a stick to draw in the dust, and he was like drawing all these figures and stuff like that. And this Roman soldier came up to him and he was like, "Stop doing that. Don't do that anymore." And Archimedes was like, "No, I need to finish my work," like not even looking at the guy at all, like despondent almost. And then the soldier killed him. And I don't, it's a very sad story about the boy Archimedes. Yeah, I don't know. I did just talk shit about him, but his death is very sad. And like I said, he did come up with a whole bunch of stuff. So it's sad that he went out that way. He was just working on his math. And this dick came up to him and told him to stop. And obviously, Archimedes, dude, he loves math so much that he's not going to stop. He can't stop. He can't stop doing math. All right. And so that's Archimedes. Oh, and I guess I'll talk about the thing that, the only real thing that I really know about Archimedes going into this, which is Archimedes' screw, which it's not a very interesting thing, but the way it was used was interesting. So if you know about the Netherlands, then you know like 70% of the Netherlands is below sea level. right? And the way that they did that was they had all these windmills that would pump water out, and then it would, like, flow down a pipe, and it would go past a dam or whatever, and so that's how the Netherlands basically expanded their area. They would pump water out of, like, these shallow areas and then put it behind a dam or whatever, and it expanded, like, the area of their country by, like, double. It's fucking huge. Um, and the way that they pumped the water out was by using Archimedes' screw, and I'm not gonna pretend to understand the math behind it or whatever, but I do think that's pretty sick. That, like, this just ancient Greek dude figured out math, and now a country is twice as big because of it. I don't know. It's a pretty crazy thing that I know about going into this. All right, and so now we're on to our second guy. Look, this is just a general science class, so we're going to be covering all the different topics. Our second guy is Hippocrates. You've definitely heard of this guy before. If you've ever heard of the Hippocratic Oath, which is like what doctors and stuff take, like I shall do no harm. I don't know. There's some other bullshit in there, but that's this guy. That's Hippocrates. So Hippocrates was born in 460 BC on the island of Kos, and he is considered the father of medicine. Um, really, before Hippocrates came along, no one was doing medicine. Like, he's like Archimedes kind of refined a lot of the math of previous Greek mathematicians. Hippocrates just straight up came up with medicine. Like no one was doing medicine before fucking Hippocrates came around, like at all, in any way, shape, or form. It was straight up like shaman, like hooshy dooshy, like just like throwing dirt in your face and doing a chant. That's basically what they were doing before our boy Hippocrates came around. So he is credited as the first person to discover that diseases are natural phenomena and they are not caused by gods or other supernatural things. Um, yeah, basically before him, everyone thought that every single disease was caused by the gods or something like that. And they believed that for a while. Um, you hear about like when the Black Plague came around and people were like, it's ghosts. Ghosts are the reason that that the Black Plague is killing all these people. Um, but at, during that time, they also knew that some diseases they just naturally came about. And the reason for that is Hippocrates. And Hippocrates, he didn't believe that any diseases were caused by supernatural things. He fully believed that every single disease was just something natural made this disease happen. So, and he's so he knew that diseases were caused by environmental factors, diets, and habits, but he could not understand these diseases due to habits or due to taboos forbidding dissection. So, I guess in ancient Greece, it was like, dude, if someone dies, you just throw them in the dirt and let them be. He couldn't like cut people up and look at them uh, and discover things like cancer and stuff like that. So he understood that these diseases were caused by, he probably didn't know about viruses and shit like that, but he knew that there was something just in the air that was causing these diseases. That was just randomly causing them. It wasn't the gods like choosing one dude that they were pissed at and being like, "You're sick now." He understood that it it was just random, but he couldn't fully comprehend what was going on there because he wasn't allowed to cut people open and look at them. Whatever. No one's listening to this episode at this point, so I can take as much sips of water as I want to. Um, yeah, I guess I'll just go on to the next thing, dude. So, traditional Greek medicine failed to properly understand that a single disease could cause many symptoms. So, yeah, the thought back then was like, oh, you have a headache and a runny nose and a whatever. They were like, this is all caused by different things. Like, your nose is running because Zeus is mad at you, and your head hurts because you didn't make a good sacrifice to Poseidon or whatever. Like, that's how they understood being sick back then. They didn't understand that, like, if you get a cold, you're gonna have a fever and a runny nose and all that stuff. They I don't know. Somehow they didn't that didn't cross their minds at all. The fact that all these things happened at once, but they weren't caused by the same thing. Um, which it seems obvious to us now, but I guess back then they were like, no, dude, a headache is too different from a runny nose. They can't be caused by the same thing, right? Surely they can't be caused by the same thing. But Hippocrates, he did understand that. He did understand that a single disease can cause multiple different symptoms. And yeah, that's just how he understood medicine. So, and that was one school. I forget what it was called. It was called like the Canodian school or whatever. But the Hippocratic school used general diagnoses and passive treatment, wherein patients received care and weren't directly uh, involved or active. So, th once again, this is something that we can't quite understand because we just use Hippocratic medicine now. But back in the day, it wasn't like a doctor wouldn't give you like some medicine or whatever to cure you. He'd be like, you need to go out and do this, 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 and that, and then you'll be cured. Whereas Hippocrates was like, no, I need I need to cure these people because I understand what's going on here and I understand all the different stuff that helps with these symptoms. And obviously, like the other schools of medicine thought that diseases and stuff were caused by the gods. And so they'd be like, oh, you're sick? You have a runny nose and a fever? You need to go out and I don't fucking know, catch a rabbit and say a poem to it or whatever. Like that's the type of medical advice they were giving. Whereas Hippocrates was like, just lay there and I'll give you medicine and I'll keep you in blankets or whatever, and then your sickness is gonna go away. And like I said, he didn't understand how to treat these diseases, but he understood the way in which diseases should be treated, if that makes sense. And we still use active treatment today, like physical therapy is an example of active treatment. And active treatment has its places, but it shouldn't be used for everything, right? And Hippocrates knew that. So he also invented a way to categorize diseases as acute or chronic and as endemic or epidemic. And so anyone who's ever like been sick before, you probably heard these. So acute is like that's just like a short little thing, like a cold. A cold is acute. It's just you're sick and then you're not sick anymore. Whereas chronic is like a lifelong thing, right? Like asthma. Asthma is a chronic disease. You're just always you might not always have it to the extreme extent that you do at certain times, but you're always going to have asthma. You're always going to be asthmatic. Whereas if you have a cold, it's going to go away eventually, or you're going to die. But for the most part, it's just going to go away eventually. And then endemic or epidemic. Endemic means, once again, the asthma cold. I'll just use that. So a cold is epidemic because it comes from outside, right? It's a virus that's passed to you. Whereas asthma is endemic because it's a part of you. You're just born and you have asthma, or you develop it over time, but it's not necessarily um, an infectious disease, right? Asthma isn't an infectious disease. You can develop it over time, I think. Maybe. I don't know if that's true, but you guys know what I mean, all right? Look, I'm not fucking Hippocrates. All right, this is the one dude. I do think Hippocrates probably is the most impactful. I don't want to say most influential of all these guys, but definitely like the most impactful. Um, because he was just the first one to understand medicine in the way that we understand it now. And I do think that's probably saved the most lives of all of these guys. But all of these guys are very important, and all of their work went on to have great effects on society, which is why we still talk about them. And he also came up with crisis. And crisis is a term in Hippocratic medicine that describes a point in the progression of a disease where things either point towards death or recovery. So, yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. So you'll be sick or whatever, and then you'll reach a point called crisis. And it sounds bad, but it can be good or bad. And so that's either things take a turn for the worse or they take a turn for the better. And crises can occur, or according to Hippocrates, crises occur on critical days, which are a fixed number of days after a disease is contracted, and more than one crisis can occur over the course of a disease. So let's say like it's a cold or whatever. Hippocrates believed that 10 days into the cold, and this isn't, I'm not saying he necessarily believed this, but this is just like a hypothetical. 10 days into the cold, something's going to happen, and you're either gonna recover from that cold or you're gonna die from that cold. Um, and if you do recover from it, or if you do begin to feel better, you can have another crisis 10 days later. And once again, it could take a turn for the worse or it can take a turn for the better. Um, yeah, that's just what he believes. I don't know, dude. No one's listening to this, but this is just, I'm just proving that I can do this. That's what this episode is. It's just me proving that I can, even when I'm sick and I have to fucking, wake up, not early or whatever, but I have to be like a skittish little animal waiting for my roommate to come back. I still can record. That's all this episode is. And no one's listening to it, and no one cares, but I do care. And that's what matters. All right. And so now we're on to our last guy, Democritus. I'm just gonna kind of run through Democritus, dude. I don't know. He's definitely the dude who understood what he was talking about the least, I'll say, out of all of these guys. So, Democritus was a polymath and pre-Socratic philosopher born in 460 in Abdera, Greece. Again, he was born in the same year as Hippocrates. So I don't know. I think maybe they just chose the year 460 as like everyone important was born in 460, I guess, according to ancient Greek philosophers. So, and he was an early adopter of the philosophy of atomism, which states that the universe is made up of fundamental invisible components known as atoms. So he didn't, he wasn't coming up with being like, there's neutrons and protons and electrons and stuff like that, but he did understand that it wasn't just like earth and water, air and fire. Like that's what natural philosophers, right? And natural philosophers is just a person who studies the physical world, right? In ancient Greece, that's what they were called. They were called natural philosophers. And back then, natural philosophers, like I said, it was just like earth, water, air, and fire. I think there was also like metal and wood and oil, but they believed that those were just like, those were the elements. But in that everything was just like, it just was, right? They didn't, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. They didn't understand that things could be arranged in a certain way and like fundamentally changed, if that makes sense, right? Like when you burn wood, it turns into ash or whatever. And they didn't understand that that ash was getting that way because the particles were being rearranged. Oh, fucking whatever. I don't care. No one cares, dude. All right. Uh, Anyway, according to Democritus, atoms are eternal and unchanging, and the characteristics like size, shape, and arrangement of atoms affect the qualities of the material they create. And so atoms uh, can be different shapes and sizes and stuff like that. And the shape and size of an atom affects the material it creates. That's exactly what I said, dude. I don't even fucking know what I'm trying to do at this point. So hopefully the current events is better if I end up recording that one. So he thought atoms of the soul were finer and more mobile, and that atoms did not follow divine direction. All right, dude, this episode was incredibly shitty, um, but I got it done, and that was the point of this episode. This episode wasn't. It was never going to be a good one. You know what I mean? Or good to me. None of the episodes are good, but I mean good in terms of my scale. It was never gonna be good, but it was just about getting it done. And you know what I did? I got it done. So you can suck my dick. Alright. Yeah. We got Thanksgiving and winter break coming up, so there'll probably be 1 or 2 more shitty episodes, and then they'll start getting better, hopefully, because I'll just have more time to record and stuff like that. But I hope you guys have a good day, a good week, a good year, a good life, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.